Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm Alison from the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association, and here we are this morning with the Qualtrics workshop, designing online surveys. So we had like a quick last minute bunch of people register, so we're up to about 50 people that registered, which is really great, and also a lot of honors students. So welcome to all. This is going to be our final workshop with Megan Lee. We've done something like 9 or 10 workshops, Megan, since February. So that's been awesome. So I remind everyone that we are recording and it'll go up to our YouTube channel and I'll post that link for you. And I encourage you to become a member of the Postgraduate Association and keep all these great workshops going all year for you. Okay. That's enough from me, I think, Megan. Thanks so much.
No worries, Alison. Thank you so much. I like to start all of my workshops with giving a shout out to the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. I completed my PhD in 2022, I believe, and at SCU. And I truly believe that I would not have finished without the support of the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. They were an amazing network of people, going to the Praxis conference every year and learning from people who were in the exact same kind of situation as me. I made some of my best friends that I still have now in the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. And they really were an amazing support for me. So I would highly recommend joining if you haven't done so already. I know that there's a lot of honours students who are interested in this workshop, designing your surveys using Qualtrics, because that is one of the things that a lot of honours students have to undertake for the first time. But also there will be PhD students who will be using Qualtrics to design their surveys for their PhD projects as well. So I'll introduce myself, and while I'm doing that, I'll get you to type into the chat box who you are, what degree you're currently doing, what project you are looking at, what's the title of your project or the topic of your project, and what sort of experience you have with Qualtrics into the chat box, and then we'll see what kind of levels we're all at. In the meantime, while you're all typing in there, I'm Dr. Megan Lee. I work at Bond University. I'm an assistant professor here. I have been here for 3.5 years, but I originally was at Southern Cross Uni as a teacher and a student as well. At any time, if you want to email me with any questions that you have, feel free to email me or contact the SCPA. I also do tutorials, if particularly in statistics, both qualitative and quantitative, if you are needing some form of assistance or help. I think the SCPA will help to cover the fee for 1 or 2 of those if you are interested. I also, if you want to follow my research journey from psychology honours all the way through my PhD to becoming an academic straight out of PhD, if that's of interest to you, or if you're really interested in my research on food and mental health, you can follow me at Instagram, X, Facebook, Blue Sky at Food Mood Doctor. And you can also have a look at my website. My website also contains every single one of the SCPA YouTube videos of the workshops that I conduct, which are also on the SCPA YouTube page. So you can come back and explore these in future years if you want to. It's really helpful when you are developing your Qualtrics survey to be able to pause me, fast forward me, rewind me at stages. So those recordings are really handy and useful when you are actually going in to develop your own survey. Let's have a look at who you all are. Pia doing her psych honours, thesis on self-care strategies used by community corrections personnel in WA. Wow, that's a great topic. Amazing. Hi.
Thanks.
No worries. How did you come up with that topic? That's amazing.
I I've been doing it for 23 years, and it's something that I'm really interested in terms of how do we maintain retention of staff, because we've lost a lot since COVID, and looking at how my title is like the invisible shield, self-care strategies in community corrections. So what is it that keeps people engaged and maintain their work practice?
Amazing. It sounds like you could definitely step into a PhD after that because it sounds like it could be a massive area.
Yeah, Louise keeps telling me that, and I'm just like one step at a time.
Everyone's interested in the PhD on that. Shoshana, psych honors, the impact of perceived stress on autoimmune disease symptom severity using an anonymous online survey. Great. So that will be very useful for today, building your Qualtrics survey. Susan, psych part-time, no research thesis yet, not until next year. It's excellent that you are getting in there and really learning the skills prior to having to apply them. So that's really good. I always used to do that in my PhD as well. Patricia, psych honors, quantitative, looking at cognitive effects of white noise for university students. That's a great one too. I really like that idea. Isha, psych honors, looking at physical exercise, specifically recreational surfing, can positively benefit mental well-being. I love that topic as well. That sounds very much like Chris Stevens, and who else does that work? Yeah, it sounds very much like those exercise physiology / psych crossovers. Great. Masters of Health Science, Survey of Australian Naturopath Knowledge and Treatment of Hyd... Gosh, I can't pronounce that. Narelle, you might have to put your microphone on.
Hydrogenitis suppurativa, commonly called HS in the community, and that for obvious reasons.
Yeah, nice. And is your supervisor Romy by any chance?
No, Janet Schloss is
Oh, cool.
my supervisor, yeah. And Jessica Bays is also involved in it as well, yeah.
Love Jess Bays. Jess and I did our PhDs at the same time on the same topic.
I was
So
going to say it's quite similar, yeah.
it's exactly, our topics were identical. So we both did diet and depression. She did a pilot trial in young men, and I did longitudinal analysis of women. So, but we were both going through exactly the same time. Yes, we are. And we currently collaborate on lots of things, qualitative and quantitative research together. Fatima, psych honors, research on exploring burnout and well-being among Egyptian women living in Australia. Oh, amazing. Really good. Is that going to be quantitative or qualitative? Because you could really look at that in both ways, couldn't you? You could do focus groups and interviews, or you could do a cross-sectional survey. It does sound like if you're here, it might be survey though. Anna, master's business law student working on a literature review to support my PhD. My interest is in ageism. No knowledge of Qualtrics. Excellent. I love that too. All of these are such great topics. Lyra, psych honors, Qualtrics, spirituality, intellectual humility, and well-being. Very good. And oh, Fatima's is qualitative. Yeah, I was going to say experiences of, just the way that that's framed sounds very like it could be both. Yeah. So Fatima, if you were not at the qualitative research workshops, which were very early in the year, there are two. There's one on qualitative research methods, so the design of the research, and then the second one was on how to apply reflexive thematic analysis to your research. And from the looks of your research question, reflexive thematic analysis would be very appropriate to exploring those experiences. So potentially have a look at those two workshops. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thomas, psych honors thesis is a qualitative exploration of well-being and labyrinths. Interesting. I'd like to hear more about how that one works, actually. Ben, mental preparation strategies for professional and semi-pro tennis players. Very cool. Kate, attachment styles in parent-child ADHD diagnosis and effect on parenting satisfaction. Nilufa, I'm a student of grad dip of early childhood. Can I join the annual conference? Yes. Yeah, everyone is welcome at Praxis. Aren't they, Alison? I will be there. 18th and 19th of June, is that right? See, I'm all over it. Graduate Diploma of Ed students are usually commonly present there. So yay. All right, let's get going to what we are doing today. So Qualtrics. The very first and most important thing that we need to do when we are developing a Qualtrics survey is not to jump into the software immediately and start trying to build your survey. It's really, really important that before you log in and start doing things, that you have your everything prepared that you need. The most important aspects of that are, number one, your participant information sheet, your debrief statement, and what your survey questions are going to be exactly and how they are exactly going to be worded, and how the scale questions are scored, what range the scales are on, and what kind of Likert scales that they are worded in. Because when you put your scales into your Qualtrics platform, they need to be worded exactly how they are worded in the validity and reliability paper for that scale. That's very, very important. Otherwise, changing the wording can dramatically affect the way that the scale is interpreted. And we'll go through that in a second. So usually it's a bit of a catch-22 with Qualtrics, because I recommend not building your Qualtrics until after you've done your ethics application, because then in your ethics application, you will have all the background knowledge to what the project is. You'll have all of your questions organized. You'll have your participant information sheet organized, your debrief statement, all of the things that you need to complete. But ethics also requests to see your Qualtrics survey. So just having all of these prepared before you go in is very, very important. Right. So we're going to be moving backwards and forwards between the PowerPoint slides and the Qualtrics platform itself. So has everybody got access to Qualtrics? That's the important thing. If not, talk to your supervisors and the uni to get that everybody should be able to have a SCU branded Qualtrics. And that's really important, because when you build your surveys, they will have the SCU logo, they will be in the SCU colors, and that's quite important when you're putting things out into the world that are the intellectual property is owned by the university. So just make sure that you're not logged in like as your own self. Use your SCU email when you log in, and make sure that the university itself has set that up for you. So I think, great, Patricia has put up a link to the SCU login.
Thanks.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you. Now, do we have any questions before we get started?
Yeah, very beautiful. Thank you. To kind of have a question.
Yeah, great.
As to like the SCU logo and things like that, I've noticed, because I had to play around with Qualtrics myself, and obviously my supervisor had set me up with the survey and I put all my measures and everything in there, but I just had to play around and set up my own little, just so I could learn about it. And I noticed on the difference between the two, like the fake survey and the actual survey that my supervisor set up, one has the SCU logo and one does not. And my, like, the actual one is the one that does not have that. So I was wondering how we could get around to putting that in, sorry.
So you'll have to talk to the IT department about that because they are the ones that will be able to link those two. That should happen automatically. So I've not seen that before. So we'll just, any kind of technological things, definitely talk to IT support. They will know how to fix those. Right. So the first thing when we log into Qualtrics, we will see this. If you don't already have a login, you can sign up. Make sure that you use your SCU email. And then it will come to the homepage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick to Qualtrics now. I'm going to share the Qualtrics page. And just be aware that my Qualtrics is a Bond logoed one. So it might look a tiny bit different just because the branding is different, but it shouldn't be too different, if you know what I mean. Now, if I am talking and the site doesn't flick, please do let me know, because sometimes Zoom makes you share and unshare things. All right, so can everybody see the Qualtrics homepage?
Yes.
Yay! Perfect. All right, so on the homepage, you have over on the left side the surveys that you have most recently engaged with. I don't tend to use this page at all. I go straight into projects. So up the top next to XM in the very left-hand side of the page is the main menu. If you click on the main menu, you have several menu options, and I always work from projects. So go to the projects page. And this is where you will find all of the different projects that you are working on. Up in the very right-hand corner, there is create a project. This is the one that you will be mainly using to start from scratch, nice and fresh. But if you've got a supervisor who has run the survey previously and can share the old survey with you, or all the questions that have already built into there, they can collaborate and send you that, and you can duplicate that into your own Qualtrics instead of having to start from scratch. So that's the two different ways of doing that. So when we create a project, we will start doing that in a moment, but as you can see here, when you have several projects, they all sit on this project page. It splits it into the ones that are shared to you, so ones that collaborators have sent to you and ones that you have created yourself. I like to put stars and click the stars on the ones that I'm currently working on and unstar or unhighlight the ones that we are not currently working on. So you will see this very top one is exploring the experiences of academics with student evaluations of teaching. This is a survey that we did in students, asking them about, no, it was in academics, asking them about their experiences with student feedback surveys at the end of each trimester. So over here in the ellipses, you can choose to collaborate, which means you can click that button and send it to your supervisors or to any authors or co-researchers that are in your team. I can't do that in this case because this one has been shared with me. This is not my lead project, so I can't collaborate and send them out. Only the lead researcher can do that. But I can rename the project, I can copy it, so you can duplicate it and reuse the questions, change it up into a different folder and resave it. I can edit it, preview it. I can look at data in it. We will do that a little bit later after we have developed one. But this is your landing page. It's got all your projects on it. So the first thing that we will do is we will look at creating a new project. For those of you who have been to the workshops previously, I always use the same topic throughout. So everything is consistent and everybody is on the same sort of page. The topic that I choose is for a reason because it's really understandable, really easy. So it's data that I collected in 2023 on vegetarians and vegans who have been vegetarian and vegan for their entire life. And the outcome was depressive symptoms. So we measured their diet quality using a food frequency questionnaire, asking them about the foods that they eat and rating it from healthy to unhealthy. And the Center of Epidemiological Scales for Depression, which assesses higher scores, basically relate to higher depressive symptoms. And the population was split into vegans, vegetarians, pescatarians, flexitarians, and they had to have been plant-based their entire life. Now, the reason for that was because all of the research that we did previously on cross-sectional surveys, when we got self-reported vegans and vegetarians, when we looked at their food frequency questionnaires, they were also telling us that they ate meat. So we were like, we aren't actually assessing vegans and vegetarians, we're assessing low meat consumers. So people who've been vegan or vegetarian their entire life are less likely or unlikely to consume meat. So we look at that population. So that's what we will be doing today. We will be looking at developing a survey for that population with that topic. So to do so, we click Create Project at the top here. Let me know at any time if the screens don't change. I know I said that before, but I just want to be certain. In Create a Project, we want to do one from scratch and we want it to be a survey, but you can use the templates that Qualtrics has. I'm not sure if they're super useful because the artificial intelligence inside Qualtrics now actually helps you build inside your survey from scratch anyway. So we will go to survey. We want to build a survey from scratch from a blank page and get started. Now we're going to name this project. I've already got the Vegetarian for Life actual project in there, so I just have to be very careful. I'll call it Veg for Life, Diet Quality and Depression Test, just so I know which one to delete later. Create a blank survey project. You can also import your questions from an existing project, as I said before, or from like Excel in your computer. I like building them from scratch just so I know I have complete control over what is happening, but that's just me. So we're creating our new project. You can be following along with this on your own Qualtrics screen if you have that available, or you can just watch me and rewind and fast forward the recording later if you want to. So this is our landing page for our actual survey. We have several different options. I'm having trouble with the Zoom screen. There we go. So we have several different options here. We can build straight from this menu on the right-hand side using the options on the left-hand side. So this little builder icon here that looks like a clipboard is where you build the questions inside of your project. Now, the very first thing that we like to do when creating a new project is protecting our survey. Now, when I was very new in research, a team and I at SCU were doing a project on the perceptions and experiences of people with organic foods. And we put out our survey and we were ticking along nicely. And then all of a sudden we got thousands and thousands and thousands of participants doing the survey every 3 or 4 seconds and saying all these nasty things about organic foods. And it was a bot. Someone had, for some reason, targeted our survey and just slammed it with thousands of bot answers. So since then, I have always protected my surveys with a captcha. So for this first block, I would go over to question type here, and we've got several options: multiple choice, text entry, so participants can freely write into it, text or graphic where you can put your own text, matrix tables. We're going to go through all of these as we move along today. Slider, form field, lots of different options. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to put a captcha verification as my very first block. And I'm going to call it captcha. So you'll see here how I have labeled it up the top here as captcha. The reason that I do this is because when this imports into SPSS or a software program, that one up the top will be your variable name. So rather than going through and having to clean the data when you get it into the program, this is kind of like a shortcut where you are labeling your variables as you go. And here, question 1, same sort of thing. We would just call it captcha because it's not one of the questions in our survey. The question here could be, please verify that you are human. Something along those lines. You can create your own captcha, and it will throw a captcha into the beginning of your survey. Now you'll see here that there is the option to add blocks. Now I add my blocks in a hierarchical fashion. So I'll put the captcha first. I'll put my participant information sheet in its own block. I'll put my demographic questions into their own block. I'll put each of the scales into their own block so they're separated. And you can preview what the blocks look like up here with the preview function in the right-hand corner. If you wanted to know what it looks like on a mobile phone device, if you want to know what it looks like when a participant accesses it on a computer screen, that preview will show you what those blocks look like. But they separate the questions and pieces out so that it's a nice experience for your participants. So I would have the captcha all by itself in one block. Then I would add a block. So the next most important stage is to, and we have had students who have forgotten to do this in honours, so please make sure that you don't forget, is to add your participant information sheet. So I would call this block PIS for participant information sheet. And you can import it from the library or you can copy and paste it in. So all I do is I get a Word document of my participant information sheet, and I'll show you both ways. You can either import it, which kind of is better. This is what it looks like when I copy and paste. So I just copy from a Word document, add new question, text or graphic, which means that it will be your text and no question box for the participant to respond to. Click in, copy and paste from your Word doc directly into the participant information sheet. But can you see how it's all not formatted nicely? You can play around with the formatting.
Sorry to interrupt, Megan. There's
Yeah.
just a question from Christine in the chat about
Sure, let me have a look.
Is a block a page?
Yeah, definitely. So it's like a different page. It'll go from one to the other. Whereas, and if you see, like if you put all your demographics in one page, they're all blocked together, and then there'll be like a blank space and the participant will click next and it will go to the next page. So yeah, exactly. Great question. So as you can see here, you can play around with the formatting. I would put the title first rather than the ethics. I would take date out. And then just play around with the formatting of how you would like to see the text. It's a bit clunky, but you can like space it out, make it look a little bit nicer, and then it will be formatted in the SCU colors and font. So as you can see there, we've like spread it out a little bit. If we preview that, keep in mind that every time you do a preview, it adds a response that you have to delete later, but that's okay. So if we preview that, what we've done so far, we've added the captcha, we've added the, so this is your captcha. I'm not a robot. Click next. This is exactly how it will look. And then this is what the participant information sheet will look like. Or we can is everyone seeing that? Because I think it opened a new window.
Yes, yeah, we can see
Oh,
that.
good, good,
Yeah.
okay. So if we go back to editing the survey, and I put the participant information sheet in as a import, let's see how that looks. Let me get rid of this. So delete. Yes, I do want to delete that. Now we're back to just having the captcha. Let's add the block, name it PIS for a participant information sheet, import from library. You can import from the existing libraries, or you can import from the, I'm pretty sure you can import from, oh, maybe it won't let me do it that way. I'm pretty sure that you can. It's in the bond one, not in the SCU one. All right. After the break, I'll throw the participant information sheet into the bond library, and then I'll show you how to do that. Okay. All right, there's our participant information sheet so far. Good. So the next thing that we would do after we do our participant information sheet is to build our questions from our survey. So I'm just going to show you really quickly. I'm going to stop sharing the Qualtrics, and I'm going to start sharing the Word document that we have for the survey questions. To give you an idea. So it's really wise to start with this so that you can put your questions directly into Qualtrics in the way that you've told ethics that you are going to ask your participants, because ethics want to know exactly what the experience of your participants are going to be. So once you have that approved by ethics, you cannot change any of the wording when you put it into Qualtrics. So everything kind of needs to be copied and pasted. So for our survey, we have demographic questions, gender, age. So gender is a categorical variable that has 5 categories from 1 to 5 on a Likert scale. Then we've asked participants to input their age in years. So this is a continuous variable, and we are allowing participants to write freehand what their age is. You would think that this is a very simple task. Participants do wild things and write years that are incorrect, or years that are far too young for what their other demographics are, or will write the word years in, or YRS. So usually when you give them a free hand option, it needs to be cleaned in the SPSS software. When you give a categorical variable, there's less likely to be mistakes made by the participants in the input of the data. So I always do age continuously. It's not a big deal to clean it up, but try to avoid that as much as possible. Same with height and weight. That wild things happen with height and weight. If you ask But it is also important to keep continuous variables if they are needed to be measured on a continuum. When we ask people their age in brackets like 18 to 20, 20 to 25, 25 to 30, we lose really important information about the middle categories. So we try not to categorize continuous variables like age, height, weight, things like that. But then we've got marital status, 7 different categories for married. When we are developing surveys, it is very important when you are asking participants questions that you allow people to self-identify how they particularly would like to self-identify. This is really important in particular for populations like the LGBTIQ community or the vegan and vegetarian community. So we allow them to self-identify as vegan, vegetarian, semi-vegetarian, lacto-vegetarian, ovo-lacto-vegetarian, pescatarian, flexitarian, all the different types of plant-based diets. And then if we are only interested in those who are vegan, who consume no animal products, or vegetarian who do consume some form of animal products like honey or dairy or eggs, then we will then create a variable when we clean the data. So this is the same for marital status. I always let people self-identify their marital status: single, de facto, registered partnership, not registered partnership, married, divorced, widowed. And then when it comes to cleaning the data, I will turn that variable into partnered and unpartnered with only 2 categories, because that makes the analysis of the data much more simple. And same with vegans and vegetarians. Once they're allowed to self-identify all of those different types of dietary patterns, I would then create a new variable of just those who do not consume meat at all and those who are eat mostly plants and do consume some form of animal products like vegetarian. So keep that in mind. I do the same with level of education. So we always allow people to self-identify their level of education from year 10, 12, bachelor degree, master's degree, PhD, trade certificate, grad, dip, all of the ones that are out there. And then I will collapse that into usually high school, university, and trade certificate. There are all of our different plant-based dietary followers. As I said, we allow people to self-identify, and then we build the categories that we are interested in. It's really important so that we don't disinclude people or make people feel like the way that they self-identify is not acknowledgeable. There's a category of how many years the participants have identified with that diet. If you did identify as vegetarian or vegan, what motivated you to adopt this diet? This is a qualitative question, so they can freehand write into that. Sunlight exposure per week. Then we have our scales. So the very most important scale, and the one that should be built into your survey first, is always your outcome variable. The outcome variable is the variable that you're trying to see the outcome in. For us, depression is our outcome variable. We're trying to see changes in depression by looking at diet quality. So I would highly recommend always having your outcome variable and then your predictor variable second in the order that you build your survey, because as participants get tired, they will drop off the survey and be like, oh, I've had enough of this, and they won't complete sometimes the scales at the end. So having your most important variable scales up front is makes sure that you lose less participants in attrition when you clean your data. So the Centre for Epidemiological Studies of Depression scale. And these phrasing has to be identical to what is in their paper on how this scale was built. So below is a list of ways you might have felt or behaved. Please tell me how often you have felt this way during the past week. 0, rarely or none of the time. 1, some or a little of the time. 2, occasionally or a moderate amount of time. Or 3, most or all of the time. So there you Likert scales from 0 to 3. And there are our 10 questions. I was bothered by things that don't usually bother me. I had trouble keeping my mind on what I was doing. I felt depressed. I felt everything I did was an effort. I felt hopeful about the future. which is an interesting one because that's a reverse coded question. So I'm just going to put an R there so we know to reverse code that when we do our data analysis. I felt fearful. My sleep was restless. I was happy. Another reverse coded question. I felt lonely and I could not get going. So those need to be identically phrased when you put them into your survey, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Then we've got our dietary screening tool. Each of the questions asks about diet consumption. These ones are different, as you will see. The Centre for Epidemiological Studies of Depression scale, one question, and they all have the same exact Likert scale from 0 to 3, whereas our dietary quality questionnaire is different. So our first question, how often do you usually eat whole grain breads or crackers? Never or less than once a week is 0, 1 or 2 times a week is 3, and 3 or more times a week is 5. So they get a score of 5 if they eat whole grain breads or crackers 3 or more times a week, and 0 if they don't. So the higher the score on the survey, the higher the diet quality. But if you go down, not all the questions are measured on a 0, 3 and 5 scale like the first question. Question 3 is 0, 1, 2 and 4. Question 4 is 0, 1, 3 and 5. So you'll have to build this scale differently to how you build the depression scale, and it's a lot longer. All the way down to how often do you eat takeaway meals such as McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut or Hungry Jack's? Never or less than once a week is 5. So if they don't eat those takeaways, then they get a higher score. 3 or more times a week eating the takeaway foods, you get a score of 0 for diet quality. Then we have our other scales. We've got the DASS, which is depression, anxiety, and stress. We won't be looking at that today, but it was in there. Social connectedness scale. Circle the answer that shows how much you agree or disagree with each of the following statements, from 1, strongly agree, to 6, strongly disagree. So these are all on the same Likert scale like the depression scale, but I'm going to show you a different way of building this one in a slider so you can see the different types of ways that you can build those kind of matrix questions. Then we've got physical activity, and that's the end of our questionnaire. As you can see, physical activity, social connectedness, and the DASS were all not in our research questions. So they weren't diet quality, they weren't depression, but they are interesting variables that may co-vary with our depression. So we include them so that we can control for their presence in depression. Any questions before we move on to putting this all into the Qualtrics platform?
Yes, you might be going to
Excellent.
cover this with the participant information form, but where do you put the consent that they check to consent for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can put a button in saying I consent at the end of your participation information sheet, or you can even just put a sentence at the end of your participation sheet saying, moving on with the rest of this survey, I acknowledge informed consent.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even have to be a button. It can just be them moving on to the questions. If that's written
so
into
it doesn't, there's no preferred way that like ethics or the university prefers you to do that. Yeah.
No, and usually we just throw it into our participant information sheet. Just like if our students forget to do the button, then it's covered in that. So moving on with the survey, I consent to.
Okay. Yep. Great.
Yeah, it's usually the best way to do it because quite often we will forget to put the button in. All right, well, what we might do then, I see that it's 1:45. We might have a 10-minute break and then we'll come back at 5 to 11 because we're all on the same time frame now, which is amazing. And we'll go from there into building the questions and all the different types of ways that you can build questions in Qualtrics. Right. Thank you, Alison. All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of Qualtrics itself. we've had a little bit of a look at how to open up the program, how to create a capture, and how to use the question builder. Now I'm going to show you how to make the experience more pleasurable for your participants by using the rich content editor. So let's have a look again at the participant information sheet. So you've seen how I created the participant information sheet and just added information into the block. A better way of engaging with the blocks is by a similar way, but it makes it look much better, is using the rich content editor. So for the participant information sheet, we will add a new question. We will do a text or graphic. We will click on here, PIS, so that's our variable name. And here where it says click to write the question in text, rather than copy and pasting directly into this box, we can use the rich content editor to create a nicer formatting of the question. So rich content editor, once you click in there, in here, you can add figures or graphics, you can play with the font size and style, you can add a file, you can add media, you can play around with the colors and the formatting of the text, you can include a URL link, things like that. So in here, we will again copy from a Word document and paste into the rich content editor. And as you can see here, it has created a much nicer looking experience for the participants. It's spaced it out the same way as in the Word doc. The font is in the same style. You can go in and you can add, I wouldn't put a date on it because it's going to be different for each participant. I would probably move the ethics number underneath, but this is exactly what the ethics committee has approved. So it looks much more like that. So going down, having a look at how that looks now, and then at the bottom, you've got your contact details, things that the ethics committee has agreed should be bold. Going back into our rich content editor again, we can go all the way down the bottom and we can add, and this is really important for participants if they would like to download the participant information sheet to their computer so that they have a copy of it. And sometimes ethics will require this. So to do that, you just click on this button that says Insert File, find your file, upload a new file from your computer. I've got 5 versions of this, so click on that. And it will just provide a link to the participant information sheet. So you can write to download the participant information sheet, please click this link. That way your participants have a copy of that. And you can do that with audio files and things like that as well. So a much nicer look. So let's preview that and just see what that looks like compared to what we saw before. So please verify that you're human. I'm not a robot. And then this is what it looks like this time. Much different. And you have much more control over font size and style, bolded, where things are. It's a much easier experience. And then down the bottom, there is your participation link with a spelling error, which is very much like myself. Great. So, and you can play around with all of that and how it looks. There was too much white space up here, I think, so removing that, playing with the font size and style, maybe putting a space between these bits. So just playing around with it. So that's our participant information sheet done. The next stage is to build our actual survey. So we will add a block here. Actually, with the participant information sheet, when we are clicked into this file or this menu over on the left-hand side tells us, gives us experience in creating the that block. So we can do things like change the type of content, we can change the graphic, we can even put a file in. So if we click file, we can choose a file here to go in, or we can choose it to be text like we had before. And here we can do a logic system. I'm going to show you that on another question, the next question that we build, how to do that. So for this survey in particular, it was really important for us to not include anyone who has not been vegetarian for their entire adult life. So we have what we call a qualifying question. And a lot of surveys will have inclusion and exclusion criteria that you don't want participants to keep going and doing a survey if they don't meet those inclusion exclusion criteria, because that means that you'll have to clean them out of the data later. So rather than doing that, we can kind of throw them out of the survey at the beginning nicely. So we add a block, and I would call this the qualifier or the qualifying question. Keeping in mind that SPSS doesn't like 2 words for some reason for their variables. So we've got the qualifier over here on the menu side. We've got our ways that we can move through our survey. We want to add new question. We want it to be multiple choice. And we just want to name it qualifier again. And our question will be, have you consumed a vegan or vegetarian diet your entire adult life? And then we would click a choice. We only want 2 choices here. So over here in the left-hand side column, we only want to allow the participants to answer 1. They can't answer multiple questions, so that's correct. We only want 2 choices. We'll click on our choice and we'll write yes. And it's given me the other choice. I don't want that. I just want yes and no. So they've either eaten a vegetarian diet their entire life or they have not. If they have not, if they click no, then we want to take them to the end of the survey. So over here on the left-hand side menu, we scroll to the bottom to our logic questions and we apply a skip logic. Our skip logic, we skip from this question to the end of the survey if participants click no, if no is selected, but you can do any type of skip logic here. So if there is a question at the start of your block and it's a yes or a no, such as, have you experienced depressive symptoms? Yes, it will continue in the block. If you click no, it could take you to the end of the block to the next set of scales if you are not experiencing depressive symptoms. But for this, we want to take them all the way to the end of the survey, and then there'll be a nice little message in the skip logic saying, thank you for your time and your answers. You don't qualify, or something along those lines, but something nice instead of being kicked out harshly. So that's our qualifying question. The next set of questions, we'll add a whole block of demographic questions. So I would call the block demographics, and then I would add a new question. Our first question was gender. So we would call our question variable gender. And then we would go from our Word document and we would type in exactly what we have agreed with ethics. We would ask the question. So remember, no changing of any of the questions. So we've got male, female, transgender, other, and prefer not to answer. I want to add another one because we don't have We want to add other. See how the artificial intelligence in Qualtrics, when you started the question, it gave you automatic answers. So you're just making sure that they're correct. With other, our question asks them to specify. So we need to add a specify as well. Give them the option to specify. Does everyone want me to do that again? So we just clicked on other on the arrow pointing down, and then at the top it says allow for text entry. And that allows the participant to write what the other is. If you go back to our third workshop on statistics can be fun, where we talked about data cleaning and descriptive statistics, I show you there how to clean a data set that has an other option and how to either put them into the categories that you have currently or create new categories if you had not thought of those. So go back to that workshop if you would like to know how to clean that sort of data up. So we've got gender there in our block. Then we would not create a new block because we want all of our demographics to sit together on the same page. We would add a new question. The next question was, what is your age? And it was, we're allowing the participants to just include their own text. So putting the variable name age, going to our Word document and typing in exactly what we said to ethics we would ask the participant into that box. What is your age in years? And that gives the participant the ability to free write what their age is in years. And that's done. So they're the two different types of demographic questions. You've got your categorical variables and the way to offer a free text option in one of the questions. You then have a continuous variable and the options that you will allow your participants to insert. Inside of your questions, you also have the opportunity or the option to force the participants to answer those questions. So that's in the options section, force options. So the next thing that I will show you is how to create a matrix question. So the questions like the Center of Epidemiological Studies for Depression is in a matrix. So we will, once we've completed all of our demographics or our categorical and our continuous variables, we can add a block. For each scale, I would add its own unique block, so they're on a page by themselves. I would just call it CESD for Center of Epidemiological Studies of Depression. And then I would add a new question as a matrix table. Let me have a look at the messages. Isha found the forced question. Where was it? Let's have a look. I think it's in display logic. It's one of them. It's buried in here somewhere. It used to be by itself. Isha, where did you find it? It used to be like out in the open. It's moved. Add requirements. Let's have a look. So you can add a forced option. I do this for most of my questions, but not for sensitive questions like height and weight, particularly in the research I do on body image in the postpartum. I don't force women to report their height and weight. And I just don't worry if I have missing data. Add requirements. There we go. Force response. So a forced response means that your participants have to include it. I would force most responses apart from your sensitive ones. So maybe not gender. Age, I probably would, because it's important or not, but definitely your outcome variable and your predictor variable, I would force a response. And I think these are automatically forced at the moment. So here we are, we have our CESD. If you type CESD in here as your variable name, each of these statements here, or each of the questions, will come up in Qualtrics, in SPSS as CESD1, CESD2, CESD3, if you type CESD into the very top there. So as I said, it helps you with later on cleaning your data up. And I'll show you another trick in a second as well. So for the Centre of Epidemiological Studies for depression, we need to write exactly in here, identical wording to what's in the validity and reliability paper, and also what we promised ethics that we would write. So below is a list of ways you might have felt or behaved. Please tell me how often you've felt this way during the past week. Now, each of the statements are the questions in the scale, and each of the columns are the Likert scales. Now, for the Centre of Epidemiological Studies of Depression, we have 4 Likert scales from 0 to 3. Currently, we have 3. So we need to go to scale points on the left-hand side and click 4, because we need 4. And we will type into those exactly what they are. So the first one is rarely or none of the time. The second is some or a little of the time. Third is occasionally or a moderate amount of time. So having a Word document of all of your resources at the beginning is really handy, so you don't have to free type everything. As I said, you'd need this for your ethics. And then for most or all of the time. Then each of the statements, we've got 10 statements. The first statement is, I was bothered by things that don't usually bother me. The second, I had trouble keeping my mind on what I was doing. The third, I felt depressed. And we've run out of options. So we need to include more questions. So the scale has 10 options. We could continue to pop them in. I felt everything I did was an effort. Now, number 5 is reverse coded. I felt hopeful about the future. So I would recommend not reversing these in the Qualtrics survey. I would recommend doing that at the data cleaning stage in SPSS. And you can keep adding in the questions for that scale. I felt fearful. My sleep was restless. I was happy, another reverse coded question. I felt lonely. And finally, I could not get going. So that's our full scale. Now the CESD, and this is really important. When I did my honours in psychology, I did body image in the postpartum. I did a survey asking women about their eating patterns, their body image. And when I got to putting my Qualtrics survey into my SPSS file, and I analyzed my data, I cleaned my data, and then my data was doing all this weird stuff where it wasn't aligned with the literature. And I was like, what is going on? When I went into SPSS, I realized that Qualtrics had applied its own values to my Likert scale that weren't aligned with the paper. So for the CESD, it is measured rarely or none of the time is 0, some or a little of the time is 1, occasionally or a moderate amount of time is 2, and most or all of the time is 3. So if I want to compare my results of this scale to other scales or other papers that have used this scale, then I have to use that 0 to 3 scale, where if a participant answers 0, rarely or none of the time to all 10 questions, they'll receive a 0 for their total depressive symptom score. But if they say most or all of the time for every question of the 10 questions, they will receive 30 as their total score. If those Likert scales are incorrect and incorrectly labeled in Qualtrics, which then goes into SPSS, your analysis is going to be incorrect. So the problem is Qualtrics does this in the background and you can't see it. You can't see what it has coded these Likert scales. So we go into recode values. So all the way down the bottom of the left-hand menu is recode values. As long as we're clicked on that block, we click that. And as you can see here, Qualtrics has decided that rarely or none of the time is a 1, some or a little of the time is a 2, occasionally or a moderate amount of time is a 3, and most or all of the time is a 4. So this is incorrect. So I need to recode those values inside Qualtrics to align with what the paper Likert scales are. And so I compare my results directly to other papers that have used 0 to 3. Now you can do that in SPSS, but as a novice, sometimes you don't pick up on it. So recoding your values in Qualtrics is a really easy way of making sure that your Likert scales are the same as what the original study is. So save that. They've all been recoded. When they go into SPSS, they will go in the correct code. Again, you can also look at gender up here. So we had male as 1, female as 2, transgender as 3, prefer not to say as 5, and other as 4. This is not as important because gender is not compared to other papers. But if you did want to recode your values for gender so that they were the same, you could also do that inside of Qualtrics. So you can do that for each of your categorical variables.
Megan, does that explain reverse coding? Or there's just a question in there about reverse coding.
Yeah. So with reverse coding, like I said, I would normally do that inside of SPSS, but you can reverse code the ones that may be reverse coded inside of Qualtrics. I wouldn't recommend it because you may not know if you've recoded them correctly by the time you've gotten there. But you can go in and recode the reverse coded ones in Qualtrics as well. Do not recommend. Do that in your data cleaning. Nice. So I've showed you how to do a matrix table. There are other ways of doing the logic of the scales. So I'll show you a scale in a different format to the matrix. So we'll do social connectedness. So we'll add a block for the social connectedness scale. And we'll add a question and we'll use a slider instead of the matrix table. So again, we name our variable SCS, and each of the questions will be SCS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the social connectedness scale, we have a Likert scale that ranges from 1, strongly agree, through to 6, strongly disagree. So we click our question there. That's exactly how it's written in the scale. So this sliding bar here from 0 to 100 should be 1 to 6, according to our Likert scale. So we will go down and do scale points from 1 through to 6. But as you can see there, we can also change the increments down to 1 to 6 here. So depending on how you want it to look, you can change the increments on the slide. You can also then change the labels at the top. So it is currently we've got 5 labels, and we only really want strongly agree. Do we want labels at all? Maybe, maybe not. So we can add labels, we can choose not to. So we can have 2 labels, and the labels can be from strongly agree to, I don't want it to be 1 to 5, so we can get rid of that. We want 2 strongly agree to strongly disagree, but they don't really align very well with the 1 and the 6, which is not helpful. Or, considering that it's already listed in the question, we can remove the label from 1 to 6, strongly agree through to disagree. Then we can add our 8 questions, just like we did with the Centre of Epidemiological Studies for Depression. So I feel disconnected from the world around me, even around people I don't feel that I really belong. What else have we got? I'll just do the top 3, even though there's 8. I feel so distant from people. And then you'd put all your 8 questions in there into the slider. And then participants have the opportunity to slide the slider instead of clicking on the Likert style question. So that's completely up to how you would like your participants' experience to look. Now, with the Centre of Epidemiological Studies scale, obviously it's 1 to 6. Let's go into recode values and make sure that they should be correct this time. Oh, we don't need to recode these because they are 1 to 6 already. So they are done correctly. We can add our requirement. We can force the response because it may be important as well. Once we have completed all of our scales and put them in the correct order, remembering our outcome and our predictive variables need to go first, then we can close down or make the final pages. Would you snap to increment for the labels to line up? That's a good thing. Let's go and have a look. So we click on that, add labels to no, that doesn't work either. There's got to be ways. Maybe, no. There's got to be a way of moving that text. There'll be an option in here that will help. But I cannot see right now where that is. That's all right. We can have a play around with it. Right. So the final thing that you need to do is make sure that you provide your debrief statement. So I would call the block debrief. Copy and paste your debrief statement from exactly what ethics has given you. Add new question, text or graphic. Debrief. Click on the question, rich content editor, copy and paste into there. And inside our debrief statement, we also have insert link. Please enter your email address using the link below. So a lot of surveys will ask, or some surveys will ask for details that you need to remove from the data of the participant. So an example of this is, say you're doing a survey and participants can click a link on an option to be involved in future focus groups or interviews to elaborate on their answers. Or if you have a link to go into a competition to win a voucher or a money prize, then that needs to be separate, a separate survey to the current survey that has the participant details in it, so that they're de-identified and we can't link their email addresses to their current data. So this is where you can create another Qualtrics survey and click a link here to that survey. So you type the link in for that survey, it'll take them to a new survey where they can put their identifying information in that cannot be linked to their current data. So that is an opportunity that you can do as well. So there's your debrief statement. We pop the link in there, don't forget to do that. And then the last block is the end of survey block. You can change up the automatic final statement. We thank you for your time. Your response has been recorded. You can change that up to whatever you like. I usually leave the default there because it comes, your debrief statement is basically your personal thank you and saying the information that they have to contact the researchers, things like that. So that will take them to the end of the survey. Now, once you've finished your survey, you can then play around with, on this side, the survey flow, how you want the survey to look, but the look and feel brush. Now, the look and feel brush will be set to the SCU colors, logos, things like that. If your brand's theme is not coming up, have a look at how that, how you can change that. But you can also change the layout of how you want the questions to look. So there's the flat layout that I usually use, which we've just seen. There is the modern layout, which is a little bit different, so you can change it to that. Or the classic layout. So they're different looks and feels that you can play around with. You can decide how you want the next buttons to look, whether there's a progress bar. Sometimes the progress bar is really good. It'll tell you how much of the survey you have completed. That one is actually a really good feature because participants don't know how far to go. And sometimes they might be on the very last question, be like, that's it, I've had enough, and leave. So the progress bar is actually a really good option. You can put headers and footers in. You can choose your styles and your colors. The colors that I have here are the bond colors, but SCU will have the bright blue and the yellow in there. You can do what font style you want your questions to be. You can play around with the sizes. You can make decisions about how your pages transition, whether they slide or flip. You can play around with the logo. The bond one should be in there or not. You can play around with background colors, what you want the backgrounds to look like. I usually leave everything in the brand, but if you do want to play around with it, you can. And then there's your survey options. In this, you can give your survey a name. I really recommend this because this is what your participants will see when they open the survey, and it usually will say Qualtrics survey. So rename it to your actual study. You can provide a description of the survey if you want when they click on it. You can change the languages that are acceptable. You can show the respondents the question numbers. I don't do that. because I changed the question numbers to the variable numbers. So if you have that switched off, the participants won't see those variable labels. Then in responses, you can add a back button to allow people to change their previous responses. I don't usually apply that. You can allow respondents to finish the survey later to come in and out. Sometimes that's useful if they get interrupted. You can custom your error messages. If a participant doesn't complete a forced response question, an automatic error message will come up saying, you need to complete this question. You can change and monitor those. You make decisions about what you want to do with incomplete survey responses. I always keep them because when you are publishing your thesis or your peer-reviewed survey publications, you need to write down how many people actually clicked into the survey. That's really important. So to know how many were removed. So always keep that on record and not delete. You can make the survey close at a specific date. And what to do when, what message comes up when the survey is closed. So if a participant clicks on the link and the survey has been closed down, it'll have, you can write a custom message saying, we have completed recruitment for this survey, something like that. Then you've got your security. I know I showed you how to put the capture in at the beginning of your survey, but there is also an option here to provide a better detailed capture as well. So you can password protect your survey so people can have to have a password to conduct it or to be involved. You can, this is a good one, prevent multiple submissions. So that will stop participants from being able to access the survey from the same computer. That's a really important one because sometimes participants will forget they've done your survey, or someone will be going in and trying to make multiple answers to your survey to like kind of wreck your data. So making that default on is important. And then creating a bot capture here, you can do that here as well. So this is bot detection. They will flag responses that look like they are what happened to us, where there's thousands of answers coming in from one kind of place. There's lots of different options that you can access. You can anonymize responses so it doesn't record the respondent's IP address, their location date, and their contact information. I would put that on, that de-identifies your survey. And then what sort of messages there are in after your survey is finished. So you can load a thank you email to go out to your participants, manage any email triggers, things like that through the Qualtrics survey. Are there any questions? Yes, there are.
I've got a question.
Yeah, great.
I'm just wondering, say you've got the name of a scale that's like, say, the intellectual humility scale. Like, are you best off not actually, like, you just have your code, you don't sort of say, oh, well, I'm testing your intellectual humility now. You just keep the, because I wondered
exactly.
whether ethics were like, well, you're not really disclosing what you're testing them in that.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Lyra. Most of the scales will not, the verbatim statement before their scale will very rarely alert the participant of what we're measuring. So if you use exactly verbatim what the scales have created, you don't have to worry about that. So you don't write Center of Epidemiological Studies of Depression scale and then the verbatim thing. You just write the little statement that the scale has before it and then the scale questions, and you don't write the name of the scale or anything.
Yeah, okay, because I just wondered whether ethics thought that that might be sneaky.
No, not at all. As long as in the debrief statement, you alert your participants about what the study was actually about. That's what the debrief statement's job is. So thank you for taking part. This study was looking at the diet quality of vegetarians for life and their depressive symptoms. your participation in this study may help researchers uncover the different ways that we can help with depressive symptoms in people who are plant-based, something like that. So you're always letting your participants know what the aim of your study was after they've completed the questions, not before.
Yep. And also, when you've got a scale that's got, like, say 25, 30 questions, and I saw that you could shade every second one, so it helps sort of follow that line through. I haven't seen how to do that.
Yeah, that's on there. That's a default at the moment. You can turn that off or turn it on. But yeah, shading the questions so one's white, one's grey, one's white, one's grey is a option that you can use. I'll go in there and show you that.
Okay, great.
Rianne, if there's time, could you explain how to obtain a link to the second Qualtrics survey for emails? Yep, I can do that. I'm also going to go in now and show you what to do once your survey is created to collaborate with so send the survey to your other research team or your supervisors. I'm also going to show you how to publish your survey so that it's out in the world and how to distribute it using different links. So when I do that, I'll also show you how to create the second Qualtrics survey. And yes, it can only be created post-publish. Or not post-publish. Once you've finished the first survey, you'll need to create the second survey. But you can wait to publish them together. Courtney. Hi, I'm one of the honours students' supervisors. Attending this workshop to pick up some extra tips to support my student in designing Qualtrics. I wanted to say I love this workshop. You explained all the little things to be aware of, like capture for bot, prevention, and participants completing the survey on different devices. These little things are not what you find in online how-to tutorials and are yet really important to know to make the whole process run smoothly. Thank you, Courtney. I basically designed this workshop with all of the things that I have found out by trial and error and I've done wrong. So all of those little tips are things that have actually happened to me and I'm like, how do I fix that? So yeah, it's just that tiny little bit of experience of using Qualtrics and all of the little tiny things that can happen. So let's just quickly go through what to do after you've published your survey. So the first thing that you want to do before you actually publish the whole thing, so we go back to our survey. Here it is. We want to pilot the study. So to do that, we click on the preview button. So let's just have a look at what everything looks like. So you can click between mobile view on and off. So you can look at it, how a participant will also see it on mobile phone, which is how most people actually do these surveys. So it's good to see that. You can see our progress bar is up the top there and it'll give you a live example. So let's go through and just do this once. So I'm not a robot, I'm pretty sure. And then you can see here what the participant information sheet would look like on a mobile. You'd have to scroll down, obviously. Here's the scroll button. Let me scroll. There we go. That should work. Also, you can see the 0 to 100% at the top of the mobile screen as well. Oh, that's letting me scroll. That's why. So there you go. You can see what it looks like on the computer screen on the left and what it looks like on a mobile phone on the right. I agree. I consent. Have I consumed a vegan or vegetarian diet my entire life? If I clicked no here, it would send me to the end of the survey. So I'm going to click yes. What gender do I identify as? What is my age? I'm going to type my actual age in. There you go. And then obviously this page would keep going with demographic questions. And then at the end, after the participant has completed all demographic questions, then the button would appear. Then on a new page, the CESD. And as you can see here, it doesn't say CESD at the top. All it says is, below is a list of ways you might have felt or behaved. Please tell me how often you have felt this way during the past week. The participant can click on the options, keeping in mind if anyone does a pattern like what I'm doing, you might want to remove them from your data set. But they click on the options and then click that button. Let's see what happens if I don't. Oh, well, I've clicked all of them now. We'll do it in the slider one. And then here is the social connectedness scale. The bar's telling us we're almost done. Circle the answer that shows how much, circle, okay, take that out. Slide to the answer that shows how much you disagree or agree with each of the following. And this is why piloting your study with a couple of members of your research team and some of your social network is really important, because you'll pick up on things like this. Little spelling errors, places where the instructions are not correct, things like that. So the pilot is very important. So I slide this to a 2. Or I feel disconnected from the world around me. Even around people I know, I don't feel that I really belong. I feel distant. And so there you go. That's how your slider ones work. Click. And then your debrief statement. Thanks for taking your time. If you would like a copy of the findings, please email the researchers below. If you experience discomfort, please contact your GP or talk to your family and friends. If you have any ethical issues, contact the ethics department. Click off. Thank you for taking your time to take this survey. So when you pilot your study, you can share the preview here with your research team. So up in the top right-hand corner, there's share the preview, and you can just either copy the link and put it into a email and send it to your team to pilot. And I don't think that the responses will come up. I'll have a look at that in a second. But recommend to your team to go through and make sure that you click on different options. So what would happen if I said I wasn't a robot, and then I clicked on informed consent. So you can change that button to say I agree to consent if you want. If I clicked on I have not consumed a vegan or vegetarian diet, what would happen? It sends me to the final page. So it's important to make sure that you click on and test all the different options of what would happen. So your skip logics are working, your forced responses. I'm pretty sure we forced response to CESD. So let's go and have a look at that really quickly. So going through and just making sure that all of your options, what happens if I try and, so age wasn't forced response. Let's see what happens with CESD. Please answer this question. So the CESD is forced because it's our outcome variable. We're making sure that participants do complete the entire thing. It won't let me move on until I have completed. So that's excellent. That's exactly what we wanted to see. So the pilot of the survey, extremely important. You will, no matter how experienced you are, you will find things that are wrong. Now, next, let's go and see how to publish. Very easy. Up the top right-hand corner of your survey is your publish button. Publishing will activate the survey, so make sure that you are happy with it, and then you click publish. I'm not going to do that. Well, Qualtrics gives me some recommendations about my questions and whether I can optimize them, make them better, things like that. You can have a look at the recommendations. But then you publish. Once you have published, you can click up the top. Oh, that's where it is, sorry. You can also collaborate. So to do that, you need to go back to the projects bar and collaborate. I'll show you that in a moment. Up the top here, we also have several things that we can do post publication. So we can have a look at the data analysis. Let's go and see if any of those previews actually went into the data, because that will be important to know, because you'll need to know whether to remove them. Nope. So those previews that we did not generate any data, which is great. But I will go into a current survey that we have run and show you what these look like after. So no data is found inside any of the questions. That's good. Let's go back to our projects. Veg for Life Diet Quality and Depression Test. So this is the one that we've just created. It's got no responses. It's brand new. It was created on the 16th of April. If I click on the project options bar, I can collaborate. And you type in your... So because this is a Bond branded one, anyone who works at Bond will be in this selection. So I can click on any of my collaborators who are in Bond, or if they're outside of Bond, I can type your email address in and add there. And I can add my collaborator Talitha at CQU by clicking on her email in that collaborate box. So always add your supervisors and anyone else who is recruiting for you. Great. Next thing to be aware of. Distributing the survey. So back inside of the survey itself, we have our distribution tab at the top. The distribution tab will allow you to either create a link for an email, your social media, which is really helpful, or mobile. And you can either use one link for the entire project, or you can give each researcher their own trackable link. So you can see how many are coming from each place. This can be useful if you are collaborating with other universities and you want to see how many participants are coming from each of the research arms, if you want. They can help you to compose an email, although you usually have that email created for your ethics application anyway. So make sure that when you are distributing on social media, on email, on mobile, that you use exactly the words that you promised ethics that you would use. Sometimes it's very easy to get creative in the moment, particularly on social medias where you're only allowed 200 characters or things, and start going off and winging it. Don't do that. That could get you into trouble. So they're your distributions. Let's go to one of the surveys really quickly. I'll just check the chat first. The ethics committee said they will want to trial the survey. Can we send them a preview link, or will they complete the published survey? If they complete the published survey, can we delete those responses? Shoshana, great question. I would send them a preview link. I wouldn't publish it until after ethics has approved the questions. So the preview link is the best way to do that. If you do publish it and people have piloted it after publication, you can delete the responses. Just make sure that you know what date you are opening your survey completely. Great. Okay, so the last little bit I'll show you is how to look at things during data collection. So particularly for this study, the Vegetarian for Life Diet Quality and Depression study that we did, it was really important to have the same or similar numbers of vegans and vegetarians, and not to have those two groups unbalanced. So while we were collecting data in that study, and I'll go to the actual study itself in the projects box. This is the one. So we've got the association between vegetarian for adult life, dietary patterns of depressive symptoms. It's now closed. We had 611 participants. The last time I accessed it was the 12th of March, 2025. I was probably looking for something in the data. So I'll click on that one. This is the actual data set that we collected. And we can go up to the data analysis tab and the reports tab to have a look while we're going through what is happening with our data set. And there's lots of different options that you can use. Taking its time. So let's just look at the reports first. So in reports, you can see, we just have to wait for a moment, sorry. It's just taking a while, it's catching up with us.
A quick question, Megan. How do you set up the dates when the survey closes when you go to publish it? So do you set when it starts and when it is active? Is that done in Qualtrics?
You can do that.
Yeah.
You can pick a closing date, and that's really good science if you do that, because then you're not kind of p-hacking your way to larger numbers. But the reality is that most of the time, it can be quite tricky to get participants, and you may not have enough on your closing date. So you want to keep it open. So we don't really use that function for that reason. And we just keep it open until we have enough to meet our sample size and our
then you
power.
manually close the survey, do you? You just go in and manually close it off.
Yeah, I've always manually closed mine, but always report in your method section when it was open, when it was closed, potentially, how long for, what dates it was. This becomes important because sometimes when you are collecting data, the dates that they range across can influence your data, particularly for diet data. Like if we opened it in, say, the end of November and closed at the end of January, the whole Christmas period is in there. And people's dietary patterns change over that period. So if we didn't justify that and say, yeah, that's the time that it was over, then yeah, we're leaving out a lot of information. The page is not loading for me. This is one of my favorite things too. Come on, oh, here we go. Okay. So we've got our reports. As you can see here, our qualifying question, have you consumed a plant-based, vegan or vegetarian diet your entire adult life? We had 143 say no, so they would have been kicked out. We still need to report that those participants entered the survey. So they will be included in our original sample size number. And then we would say 143 participants did not consume a vegetarian or vegan diet their entire adult lives and were removed from the study. So we still have 426 of our 611 who do qualify and would have stayed in. Then we have our gender data. So we can see here really quickly, we've got a few more females than males, but that's actually quite a really good amount of males in a study. Gender, different data. Age, which is not very useful because it's continuous. Height, what am I looking for? I'm looking for plant-based. So when we were looking at, why is it so far down? Why did I do that? Should have put it right at the top, unless I've gone past it. Here we go. So, do you identify as vegan, semi-vegan, etc.? When we were doing this, we wanted to make sure that the vegetarians and vegans were similar. So we had 155 vegans and 33 semi-vegans. So I would consider them to be, whoa, that's a good question. What would I put them in? I would probably put them in vegetarian, to be honest, because being semi-vegan doesn't mean you're vegan at all. So I would say 155 vegan and then 33 97 plus 33, so that's about 120. Semi-vegetarian, 130. Lacto, 160. About 165. 170. About 180 vegetarians. The flexitarians I maybe wouldn't even include in the study because they're really omnivores, although it's interesting. So we had about a similar number, and once we clean the data, they'd probably be pretty close. But as we were doing the survey, we kept an eye on these numbers so we could tell whether or not we needed to recruit more vegans or more vegetarians as we went along to keep those numbers kind of similar. So those pages are really handy to get like a snapshot of what your participants kind of look like as you're going through. And then when you are ready, you can go to data and analysis. It gives you a little bit more different details about what's happening in your survey. You can see each of the participants and what they've answered in there. And then when you are ready to close your survey, you close it, and then here at export and import, you can export your data out into SPSS, Excel for data cleaning. And this is the very point where we pick back up in that workshop on workshop 1 on statistics can be fun starts right here. So I go into Qualtrics and export data into SPSS. So everything that you've learned today and everything from the workshop 1 of statistics can be fun, that can be found in that SCPA YouTube channel, directly aligned with each other. I'm just seeing if there was anything else that I had. Yeah, that was it. Yay!
Excellent. Well done, Megan. Thanks so much. Any last minute questions while we've got a minute?
I know it's a lot and it was really quick, but that's why it's really important to engage with the recordings as you're going through and being able to slow me down.
Yeah. So there is a question there about how to put in the IPAC scale.
Okay, yeah. So the IPAC scale is a little bit more tricky because there are different ways of asking the question and answering the question. I hate the IPAC. I used that in that Veg for Life, and I found it really not user friendly. So I'm actually at the moment looking for a better physical activity questionnaire. In fact, I think a 1 or a 2 question questionnaire for physical activity. The IPAC is a whole thing of its own, Isha. So I would recommend, if you would like to have a deep dive into the IPAC, how to put it into Qualtrics, how to analyze it, email me. Although I do hate it, but all your supervisors, if they have used it previously, because it's not super intuitive. Christine, you make that seem fun. I know, Qualtrics is fun. All research is fun. Data cleaning, building surveys. That's why I'm a researcher. I love it. If you think it's fun, you should do a PhD.
Okay, lots of great positive feedback there. So thanks so much for everyone's attention. Still more questions there. How about the shading?
The shading, yeah, okay. I haven't really done that. Let me go in and just have a look and see if I can find the option that changes that. Just get out of this.
You thought you were nearly finished with it.
That's okay. There are a lot of little things that you can do inside of Qualtrics, so it's really tricky to like put them all into one workshop. Let's have a look and see if I can figure out the shading, because I haven't actually done that myself. Oh, this is the wrong one. Let's go into the test one so I don't change my actual survey. Into projects. Feel free to leave if you don't want to stay. I'm not holding you hostage. Where's my test one? Here it is. Okay, let's have a look. So I reckon it'd be somewhere in look and feel. So always when you are trying to change something or fix something, make sure that the block is highlighted in blue. So this will bring up the table on the side. We're only allowing one answer, number of statements, use number of scale points, format, standard like it. We can change that. Ooh, let's see what that does. Ew, hate that. Carousel? What's the difference? Do not know. So playing around with the settings potentially is just wait.
I did play around and I hadn't found it, but I didn't
Wouldn't
really
find
look in
it.
that it's not touch and feel, look and feel.
Yeah, maybe it's
I
in
didn't
there.
have a look there.
Let's have a look. Display logic. No. I wonder. There's definitely a way of doing it. Maybe it's in the rich content editor. No. Just wait, let me look. Always, if in doubt, Google. How to create grey and white options for Likert scales in Qualtrics. Because I have never done this before. Or ask a supervisor who may have. That's always an option. ChatGPT, it might be able to do it. Custom CSS option. In survey options, it says.
Survey.
That survey option's there, right? Oh, why did I do that? Yeah, this one here. No, that's builder. Survey options. Quotas. Survey options. Ah. Click custom CSS. Scoring. It'll be somewhere. Why is it hidden so much?
I think that said custom down the bottom.
It's here.
I'm not sure where
It'll be somewhere.
custom.
Yeah, that's the survey
Oh.
message.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
It'll be somewhere.
Yeah, well, I'll have a look for it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Scott had mentioned it.
Yeah, it'll be in there somewhere. You'll just have to Google and
Yeah,
ChatGPT and just see how to do it.
thank you.
No worries.
Excellent, Megan. Just a quick word about Praxis Conference. It came up earlier and I didn't really respond. So yes, we're having our Praxis Conference Thursday the 19th and Friday the 20th. It is open to all postgraduate students, whether you're at honours, grad dip, grad cert, master's, coursework, research, PhD research. So we welcome, there's a link there for some information. Even if you haven't got any data yet, you could still present your research proposal, your literature review, what the literature is saying, the experts about your topic. So it's very it's collegial, friendly. We don't throw you any difficult questions, and also we have some great keynote speakers and a conference dinner. There is accommodation, travel support depending on where you are. So have a look at the information in that link. Yeah, it's always a fun thing. And we also welcome guests. If you don't want to present, you're welcome to just come and attend. So Amazing, Megan. That was a full-on couple of months of great workshops from you. So thank you so much. And everyone enjoy their Easter break.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Alison. And you'll all see me at Praxis. So wherever you
Great.
are up to in your data analysis, you can throw me questions if you
Yes.
like.
Yeah, great. Excellent. We look forward to it. All right. Thanks so much, Megan.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.